Aha.
Oh, here we go.
Hello, everybody. Good
Hi.
afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to this week's Conscious Together live stream with myself, Lorian, and Avanti and Oliver. Thank you for joining me again, guys. Good to see you. And so today, hopefully, we have some very interesting chats, mindfully focused conversations and reflections based on the first question: is mindfulness a magic wand? Can it fix all our ailments and problems in life? If so, how? And if not, why not? And what might we supplement that with? So plenty for us to chew through there. And Avanti's going to introduce us to a reflective or a contemplative, if I can say that, practice to start with, just to get us focusing on that question, to help us settle it in the mind, to help us bring forth our subconscious content on it to the conscious fore, so that we can process it as best we can and really have a good debate on how we can use mindfulness in this context and how it can really help our lives. And then we'll have a little mindfulness practice in the middle of today's presentation. And then we'll do a second discussion more focused specifically on mindfulness and relationships. And again, with the magic wand theme, but focusing specifically and drilling in a bit on the relationships in our lives, the key relationships in our lives, the personal relationships and the professional relationships that we need to navigate, that can be challenging and can have a very significant a significant effect on our felt sense of well-being and the felt sense of well-being of those that we care about. So that, I think, is a summary of what we're going to present to you today. So I hope you enjoy us on this journey, and I will hand over to Avanti, who will take us through this contemplative practice. I have to practice saying that word. I'm not very good at it.
Well, I've learned to say the American way, and we call it the contemplative practice. So that's a different way to say it. But I have seemed to have some issues in terms of broadband on my end. So if I zone out or if I am inaudible for some reason, please forgive me and forgive my broadband connection. But I will try my best to remain present through this contemplative practice.
Yeah, in that case, just meditate.
There you go. We know what to do exactly.
You're going to have an hour's silent meditation, and we'll blame Avanti's broadband.
There you go. But yes, let's begin by sitting down in a posture that allows you some time undisturbed and in a way that is allowing you to reflect, bring our full intention and attention to the present moment, leaving our days behind if you've reached the evening now, or simply removing all worry and anxiety about the day ahead if you're in the US. Bringing our full attention to the space around us now, the chair we sit on, the mat we're seated at, and bringing our attention to our breath, to the air going in through our nostrils, breathing in through our nose, and breathing out through our nose. And as we bring ourselves to this practice in the next 5-10 minutes, we're going to spend some time contemplating on the words that you will hear and remain open to what shows up in your mind as these words are being spoken. When we bring our relationships to focus, what can the practice of mindfulness bring to us, bring to our relationships? Beginner's mind. Bringing a beginner's mind to our relationships. Curiosity. Bringing a healthy sense of curiosity and questioning to our relationships. And how about bringing some acceptance? Some patience. Being patient when things are not going well. Awareness. And a quality of presence to every interaction, or at least the most critical ones, with people we love and cherish. And open-mindedness to how the relationship wants to take shape. And to watch what emerges as two people change and grow together. We continue breathing, bringing our attention to examples, ideas that show up in our minds, thoughts that come up. And without getting really involved or busy with them, being open to see what shows up as soon as a word is spoken. Your first thought. Exhaling to let your pent-up energy and emotions out, acknowledging what's showing up in our bodies, and becoming present to the room we're seated in, the mat or seat we're seated on. And bringing our attention back to our session now, in a time that is most convenient to you.
Thank you, Avanti.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me.
I appreciate that. Right. So then that's set us hopefully for the discussion ahead with certainly some good mindful intention and mindful focus. So the mindful magic wand, is it the solution for all life's ills and our suffering? If so, why? If not, why not? And is there anything that might bridge the gap? So who would like to start? Avanti, do you want to sort of kick off your thoughts and reflections?
Yeah. When I hear the words mindfulness, magic wand, and relationship, what immediately shows up in my mind is that no, mindfulness is not going to solve all our problems, but mindfulness alongside communication and intentions will hold a key. So my first instinctual answer is mindfulness in itself is not enough, but through mindfulness practice and through the use of mindfulness related tools, we can make ourselves heard better, clearer, and as well listen a lot better to what another person is saying in our relationship, because it is really about being able to play that dance together, isn't it? Where you have a say, where they will also have a say. So you have to be able to learn to navigate through each other's needs and boundaries, I guess. So that's my first reflection.
Lovely, thank you. Do you mind just elaborating on, just for I suppose for listeners who maybe haven't really explored mindfulness very much, or are very new to the journey of mindfulness, how mindfulness can help us be better listeners? Because I think that's super important, and I totally agree with you. But do you mind? Are you able to? Are you happy to expand on that a little bit, just for an audience that perhaps isn't as experienced in mindfulness perhaps as others?
Sure, thank you. I think for me, and this is through experience, and this is what I have tried in my own practice, is to be completely aware and present in a conversation with another person means that you have to become interested in the other person and become interested in what they have to say, knowing that you will have your turn and you can say what you want to say, but then to have the full interest in them first. And this is not easy, but there have been situations with my children, with my husband, where we have been able to come to a place where we are recognizing that the other person needs to speak their mind first, and that we allow that to come through. And that is how, and the moment you bring that intention of being present for the other person, to create that space, all you could do is be silent, but be completely with them in trying to give them that time to understand and comprehend the context they create for you as they prepare to speak with you. So to allow that patience and time through silence, but mindful, aware silence, there is a possibility of creating curiosity in what the other person is saying in a non-judgmental way.
Lovely. Thank you. Really appreciate that. That's good. Perfect.
Sure. Thank you.
Oliver, have you got? You left halfway through Avanti what she was saying. I thought that we'd
Like
she defended you with her mindful views. I'm still hoping that we'll have a mindful fight.
Exactly.
Well, no problem. First of all, you might have seen that disappeared a little bit from the screen. I think that's a real life test of mindfulness. My little Chihuahua used to stay, actually likes to stay with my daughter. And now, by this time, early morning, everyone is gone. He was just scratching the door like crazy. I had to mute myself and found out he simply just didn't want to leave. So now he's here, still testing me. Yeah, maybe that's already kind of the answer is to the question is mindfulness magic wand. I made some short video on this actually, because the reason that this question came to me is because you see mindfulness today almost everywhere. Maybe because we're, as a practitioner myself and us as a group, we're so into it. That's why, it's not only in our mind all the time, but with the channels we subscribe, with the books we bought, is coming to us all the time. The other day I was in the actually UC Berkeley just to check the admission information. In different buildings, when I was doing the tour, different buildings, different departments or colleges within UC Berkeley, you saw those billboards. Among of them, you see not only one, but multiple mindfulness related different programs. Some offered by actually very famous, very experienced, I should say, masters, right? Like some are from the monastery also. So it does give us the impression that mindfulness is everywhere. That's why we think it's a magic wand. And then if you check the applications in different realms, you have mindful sports training, definitely stress reduction and cognitive therapy. That's already very classical. But then mindful parenting, giving birth mindfully, I guess probably even mindful pregnancy, mindful leadership. It's everywhere. If a simple answer is needed, I'd say yes, it is a magic wand. But I heard Avanti, from the point of view of, can mindfulness like bring you everything or bring you everything that you want? Maybe not. It doesn't work that way. So when giving some thought, I'm thinking maybe it's a better way to look at. First of all, most of the time we need to answer yes or no, but let's see how many questions can be answered that way. Maybe only some very simple questions can be answered that way. And then for mindfulness, I like to see it from the point of view of external and internal, right? Even for a solution, is there an external solution and maybe an internal solution? An external solution is to change the world, at least the world around us, right? If in Avanti's example, if there is a relationship, somebody, like within a couple, if it doesn't work well, maybe separate or to the extreme, right? And separate or even divorce. Does that really solve the problem? If we honestly look at, for anyone who experienced that already, does that really solve that problem? Maybe not, because the problem is not external. It's maybe just internal, because wherever you go, right, the previous object or person were not there anymore, but the problem just stay with you. It's very possible. That's why internal is very important. If to the internal, if you look at internal, then really I'd say it's the magic wand. With the for example, the attitude that Avanti went through today. In any scenario, if we have that, even just one of that, you don't need all of them at the same time. That could solve a lots of problem or a problem to a great extent. There's an interesting example. I have a friend who really came up with this. If you have heard those like I Ching, which is a study on forecasting. It's not fortune telling, because this marvelous guy, he's got the PhD from MIT. He doesn't. It's not a superstitious thing. It's a he put it all to the scientific, in a scientific way, and has proved by great amount of data that working on, let's say, stock exchange, it's actually worked very well. But does that make you a Warren Buffett automatically? Maybe not, because the one who was using that app or using that algorithm, sometimes it's you unavoidably you want to check in the morning. You wake up, check your phone, and see stock exchange, and look at the one that you had purchased. Although by that app, the app tells you, no, this is not the time to sell. But when you see something, see your mind, internal, start to work. Oh, maybe it's wrong, right? It is the mind, or the mind here, or the here start to work. And you maybe even easily make a wrong decision, right? You can't wait, you just sell it. And then of course there is a regret right after that. So you can see how accurate this data or algorithm can be. Eventually it is still your mind that makes the decision, right? I think with the tenets, and of course with our practice, we tend to play slow motion, right? When we play slow motion, we are more awake or more clear on what's going on. And some of those like bad decisions are not hard to avoid if your mind is just clear, simply as that. So from that point of view, I think, again, back to the question, mindfulness can be a magic wand, right? It doesn't solve all the external to what you want, but if you go internal, do the slow motion, be clear, be awake, it can solve the problem of finding alternative or creative ways easily. So yeah, I'd say again, it is a magic wand to me if you look at from this perspective.
Fantastic. Well presented, Oliver. That's a good case for the magic wand, and Avanti had a good case against the magic wand. So it now falls to me to sit on the fence, and which is the easiest place to be, the most comfortable of places. And I can say yes and.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think mindfulness is fantastic, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here every week talking to people about mindfulness and trying to encourage its uptake and its development as a skill. For me, I think mindfulness is such a useful foundational tool because it provides that mental space. It provides that mental bandwidth to be discerning. And this is a term that's thrown around a lot in MBSR and MBCT. The ability to make a discerning choice, to choose what might be a wiser course of action based on the information you're presented with. And mindfulness allows you to step back, that recognition, that the skill, the practice of recognizing what's going on in the mind, recognizing your emotions, your bodily sensations, helps you to pause before the first thing blurts out of your mouth in a reactionary way. And it also helps cultivate a degree of empathy and tolerance for the position of others in terms of the fact that you understand that they're going through the same mental hiatus that you are, right? Their mind is just as full of noise and just as full of incorrect thoughts, unhelpful thoughts, emotional, underlying challenges based on the makeup of our lives. And those things together can help us have that space. And it doesn't need to be a big space. Again, my new favorite book, the User Illusion, talks about consciousness having a delay of half a second. So we need that. All we need is half a second to catch ourselves, to make a decision, make a discerning judgment on whether to allow our subconscious response, right, our innate emotional automatic response to come out. If we can build half a second firewall, fire break with the skill of mindfulness, then we stand a much better chance of catching ourselves before we commit to something that might be harder to step back from. And it's not about not taking action that needs to be taken. It's not about being passive. And to Oliver's arguments, it can't necessarily fix everything in the world. This is not the nature of this particular magic wand. You can't fix famine or solve malaria or political and geopolitical issues in Ukraine and Russia and elsewhere in the world, right? With mindfulness. But what you can do is, not personally with mindfulness anyway, if Putin was practicing mindfulness, perhaps there might be some interesting conversations that could be had. Maybe he is practicing mindfulness, I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, but building that bandwidth, building that space to make the decision is, for me, what is key about the skill of mindfulness. And that allows you then to do so much more. So it really is the foundation on which other things are built. And to Avanti's point, I think you do need other aspects to then build on top of that. And I think this is where, particularly with communication skills, I think you need an ethical framework, and that's critical with mindfulness, because mindfulness can be used to excuse fairly shady behavior if there isn't an appropriate ethical framework in place. And it always helps to have a grounding in human psychology and to enhance your communication skills. So but it provides that platform, that underpinning nature. So that's on that basis, I will say, I will not sit on the fence, and I will say that mindfulness is a magic wand, in the sense that it allows so many other things to happen. There.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think what we see these days is a lot of people are intentionally wanting to be hurtful, wanting to be scathing, comments on the internet, for example, unhelpful comments. And I think just being able to assess our intention, I think you put it really well, Lauren, when you said that you create that space which helps you discern whether a comment is going to be useful or helpful to somebody or not. And that blurting out could be avoided. Is it easy to do it? Is another question. It's not, and I find it hard sometimes. But I think it was somewhere that I read that mindfulness, it's a lifetime's journey. What is the quest of mindfulness? It is to have the right response. It is to have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Oliver, you probably remember it a bit better than me, but it is now I want to say it, but now I don't remember it. But it is on the lines of saying that the effort into mindfulness is to create an appropriate response.
Yeah, I think there are multiple quotes, like from Frank, right? And Frankel. Yeah. And it's interesting when you two were mentioning this. I think the space sometimes doesn't even start from the moment, for example, in between that and that's half second, is sometimes there is an overlap. For example, just within a conversation with someone, even before you're able to respond, like here, right? You started during that, when somebody was talking, you already kind of accumulating, there's already things going on. I think this overlap part, let me do this direction, you can see better. That for that period of time, if you keep mindful, you already know that I'm accumulating this kind of anger here, right? Until to the point. And if with that awareness, if that half second is even easier. So yeah, sometimes it could be multiple kind of format. Yeah, so for that space. Yeah. So there.
I had a question pop up for you, Lauren. But when you say that we create the space, how would you imagine responding in a conflict? Where do you think, how do you think mindfulness, one is of course discerning what you want to say, but oftentimes the external situation is not in our control. How would you suggest mindfulness be used in a situation where there is conflict and apparent fight? How would you handle?
A physical conflict, you're talking about a sort of an escalation of...
An escalation, exactly.
Well, that's an extreme end. Well, I always say that if mindfulness doesn't work in a hurricane, it doesn't work at all. So, and that's an interesting one. And I fortunately haven't had to put that to the test. So I'm speaking hypothetically purely here. I think what's happening is, I mean, what tends to happen, however, is when our life is in threat or danger, then our subconscious just takes over, and our conscious mind is held back. And I think because it is slow, and because it will perhaps not be trusted to take the right reaction. So I think and I'm speculating here, because I say I haven't been in the position, fortunately, but I think if you were in a physical confrontation, I don't know that mindfulness would give you a solution. I think it might help you. It might help you resolve the feelings about the situation afterwards. Okay, so however it works out for you, it's going to leave some sort of emotional turbulence, right? Possibly a traumatic event, depending on what happens. But even if it's not a traumatic event with a big T, it'll certainly, leave some emotional upset and lots of thoughts afterwards. And you can be mindful of those and allowing that to sort of process and heal through the body. But it's I think that, and I think he would want to, because I think the more you are consciously aware in certain situations, the slower you are and the more you trip yourself up and the more you're likely to not take action. And I think this is the purpose of sort of military style training and first responder training. They're drilled so much that it becomes subconscious. They don't have to consciously think, so that when they see, a gun pulled, they react, or whatever it is, right? When something explodes, they're already talking to their team and taking the actions, etc., etc. And that's not a conscious action, although the commanders and operators in the field need to take conscious actions from time to time. But I think that the purpose of the drilling is to get the subconscious to do exactly what you want it to in 99% of the situations. So I don't know if that's a helpful response, or if anyone's got any other views.
Can I share a little bit? I know in a again, real world situation, sometimes we tend to simplify that to this is like a physical conflict or combat, but in many cases it's still the mindfulness helps in terms of if it is there some unavoidable loss that you have to suffer, the mindfulness help you to minimize, right? How about back to my the dog example, right? While he was scratching crazy and barking, that time I actually was physically muted. That's why you couldn't hear it. I was thinking, shall I just remain him scratching and barking until when I have to talk, and then people will hear that too? Or I just disappear. It may sound a little strange that that I disappeared from the screen, but later on it can settle down. And right now, looks like I made the right decision. I opened the door, let him come in. You saw him, right? And trying to sit here listening to the mindfulness meditation also.
I don't think I missed that. I didn't see that at all.
You haven't, okay. But now she is at my back, almost like, also maybe sitting there meditating. So I think there was like optimize whatever at that point, what that is. Yeah.
I feel like I must bring this to the conversation too. A lot of negatively reviewed mindfulness information also actively promotes the notion that mindfulness helps push our emotions down and suppress them and not allow it to surface.
I wouldn't agree.
And
Go
this
ahead.
is why I bring the question. I think it is important. And for me, as a coach and as a mindfulness teacher, I feel like I see both sides of it. But I want to bring you in on this first, Oliver. We have to address this question: is mindfulness practice really only to dampen our emotions or put a wet carpet on them? And why we should consider them separately?
Yeah, I know we also have a topic today for relationship. I would just use relationship between two. One very often, maybe similar to that physical conflict, right? One of the safe way is to avoid, right? You just run away. But the relationship does not stop there, right? Usually in that scenario of that physical conflict, you're supposed to be a one time, right? But it's even between a cop or police and let's say a potential criminal, that could be multiple times. It's not one time, right? For example, you just hit someone hard, that creates lots of emotion. At that time, there were no choice for him because you were more, either you got weapons and or more power. The other side couldn't do anything, right? But even after being put into jail, the hate, the emotion stays there, right? And it can easily come back after 1 year, 10, maybe even 10 years, right? It doesn't disappear that easily. So that relationship or even this physical conflict could be multiple times, meaning that it's a relationship that lasts a lot longer than one fight.
Right.
Yeah, but anyways, I think to avoid is not the best choice, because just even sometimes my example, you avoid this time, but it started to accumulate, right? That's back to when I said that space doesn't sometimes starts here. It starts here, right? Already.
Yeah.
And avoid it because it's accumulated. Even before you say anything, that's already been some negative emotion there. So, but mindfulness works differently than just surprise. You surprise, the emotion is still there. In many times, avoiding is one type of surprise, right? Or just stay there, don't say anything, but you already got angry internally. What mindfulness can help you is that you see clearly. I think Lorraine used the discern, right? You see that clearly. Wow, my anger is accumulating, is growing. Interestingly, and actually scientifically, if you just being aware of that, that helps to, if not eliminate totally, it helps to reduce that, right? Really, the only thing you need is just you being aware that it's growing. It is growing, right? I think different. That's why mindfulness works differently in this kind of situation than just surprise or avoid.
Yes.
That's how I look at it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and just to Lauren, sorry, I'm going to bring you in very quickly, but just to add a bit to what Oliver says, I think it is when we suppress these emotions, we need the tool of mindfulness to be able to watch them as they show up, because the moment we can remain seated and present with these emotions as they show up in our body and mind and sensations, that is what allows them to pass through us rather than keep them stacked and stored like you were doing, Oliver. So I feel like we need to underline the fact that mindfulness is actually helping air or vent these emotions out rather than suppress them. So it is terribly more important that if you are going through a difficult situation at work or home or wherever it is, it's important to have a practice of mindfulness that will allow you to sit with what is showing up that day from that difficult situation, to allow it to show up for itself. Lauren, bringing you in here.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and I agree. This has been useful, and it's a good thing to raise, because I think there is often, as you say, this sort of misunderstanding or misrepresentation of mindfulness as turning us all into Vulcans who don't feel emotions. I think, not that my Star Trek knowledge is up to scratch, but but it's not about suppressing or not feeling emotions at all. And our emotions have evolved for a reason, and they need to, they're identifying to us of something that needs to be addressed. So to ignore them is inviting problems, right? It'll cause you, mental challenges, anxiety, depression, anger building up, etc., etc. And it has to come out. What mindfulness allows you to do, in my sort of mind, my perspective, is to not be stuck in those emotions longer than you need to be. So yeah, it's not about stopping them occurring, and you can't stop them occurring. You can try and sort of repress them, push them down, but they happen anyway, and then they have an effect on the body, and if you're repressing them, you're going to increase your blood pressure. And I have like a sort of a volcano analogy, and you can't cork a volcano and hope that that'll stop it erupting, right? It just will build up the pressure until it comes out worse. So the more you try and ignore these emotions, then eventually they will find their way out one way or another, and they'll often come out an inappropriate time, if there's an appropriate time, but a less discerning time, and probably on people less deserving of the emotion. So they're more likely to come out on your loved ones, etc., at the end of the day, because you haven't been able to process your anger with regards to your boss or your co-workers, because you're in a corporate environment and you don't know how to behave in that, and also you don't know how to behave, you don't know how to manage your anger in that environment, perhaps. And so you come home and you kick your dog or throw baked beans at your kid or something, for example. Those are examples that I've just made up. They're not things I've actually done.
And we don't advise on this channel to do it.
This is not parenting advice. Don't throw baked beans at your kids.
No, sit down to meditate. Yes, thank you. Yes. No,
Thank you.
Yeah. It's good. I think we're at a good space to sort of contemplate this a little bit more, or meditate on. What do you think?
I think a final practice is probably a good place. I know we haven't really spoken about relationships very much, but we'll just have to hold that for next time. I mean, that'll be next week. So I think this has been a fascinating exploration of the mindful magic wand and tipping into sort of the mindfulness response to emotion. So yeah, no, that's really good. I mean, and Avanti, do you feel happy doing another reflective practice based on what we've done, or do you?
Yes, I could, unless Oliver, would you want?
No, I'm good. You just go ahead, Avanti.
Should we do a contemplation or a meditation? What do you think, Liz?
Okay, great.
No preference. Okay, let's do this. So as we come back to sitting in a posture, either laying down or sitting in a position that will support us for the next 10 minutes or so. Just coming into full awareness of how our body is responding to this information that we've heard so far. We've spoken about mindfulness being potentially a magic wand, which helps us create distance, create clarity, as we choose an appropriate response. We spoke about mindfulness bringing the awareness of being heard, of being listened to in a relationship. And we spoke about how externally we may not be able to change everything immediately, but how internally we could use mindfulness as a magic wand. Which will help our values and principles align with our actions and thoughts. Watch what shows up in your thoughts as you hear these words. What sensations are showing up in your body right now? Are there thoughts about your own relationships and how you could use this information? While you observe your mind being busy trying to find solutions to your own relationships. Or your mind becoming busy to respond to the questions that were asked in this session. What is showing up for you in your mind right now? Allowing those emotions to show up as you watch them seated. Without trying to change them, remove them because you don't like them. Or want more pleasant thoughts. Possibly because you're in a happy relationship right now. Just simply observing what your mind wants to do right now. We can remain mindful even in the way that we allow our emotions to show up for us. Allowing difficult emotions like guilt or shame, fear, and watching them as they are, literally, as thoughts. They're not real. And we don't have to believe everything they say. But they do need to be seen and acknowledged. These emotions are signals your body is sending you through experiences you've had before. So acknowledging our bodies, acknowledging the thoughts that are showing up right now, and being okay with them, just allowing them to pass. We bring our attention now back to our breath, or a distraction that is trying to get our attention. As we prepare to step into the space of going back to our routines, knowing fully that we are always able to come back to the space of reflection and contemplation, so that we are able to view the emotions and thoughts that are going around in our body and mind. This is how you take care of yourself in your relationship. I invite you now to come back to the room you're seated in, to the space you're seated in, back to the session so we can get ready to sign off for the day.
Oh, Lauren, you're muted.
Thanks, Avanti. That was really nice. Okay, so thank you both very much for today's session. That was a really good discussion around the magic wand, and I look forward to continuing our discussions into relationships next week. I think there's lots to be getting through there, and more time for us to reflect on some of the elements we might choose to bring with us. So thank you everybody for watching, and please do like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Leave any comments, any questions, or to the Conscious Together website, and we will include the link to that in the show description and the show notes below. So in that case, everybody, thank you all so very much, and we'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon. See you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Take care.
Yeah.